And we're going to start with the third step prayer, which is on page 63 of your big book. Hope everybody's got your big book handy. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. I do thy will always.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I'm Leo, and I'm a recovered alcoholic, and I appreciate you all being here today. Thank you very much. We are, in fact, on page 1, chapter 1, Bill's story. A little bit about that the book was edited by Tom Uzel, if I got that pronunciation right. And he's the one that actually moved Bill's story up to chapter 1. They had decided that was a good place for it. And as far as Bill's story is concerned, we're going to start off basically when he's getting ready to go into the Army. He was inducted into the Army in May of 1917. He was an artillery officer. And then we will kind of talk a little bit more. We've got a couple of other things that will come up as we go along, but I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Rob, and we'll get started.
Okay, page 1, everybody. Bill's story. War fever ran high in the New England town to which we new young officers from Plattsburgh were assigned, and we were flattered when the first citizens took us to their home, making us feel heroic. Here was love, applause, war, moments sublime with intervals hilarious. I was part of life at last, and in the midst of the excitement I discovered liquor. I forgot the strong warnings and the prejudices of my people concerning drink. In time we sailed for over there. I was very lonely and again turned to alcohol.
Yep, and what he would be turning to is what is known as the Bronx cocktail. Is what he was at a party, and that was the drink that he discovered. It is a martini with orange juice, just to let you know that. And before he went to Europe, he also got married. And on January 24th of 1918, Bill married Lois. And before he left for Europe, so couple of little things in there that don't come up, but that's kind of the things that were going on. The Bronx cocktail, and he got married before he actually went over to Europe. Rob?
I remember the time frame that these people are going over. You know, moments hilarious with intervals sublime, or moments sublime. You know, these people didn't know whether they were coming back or not. Whether they were, got some typhoid or whether they got shot, they didn't know whether they were coming back. So Bill was scared to death, and he's going to show up to Winchester Cathedral where he has one of his first spiritual experiences. So we landed in England. I visited Winchester Cathedral. Much moved, I wandered outside. My attention was caught by a doggerel on an old tombstone. Here lies a Hampshire grenadier who caught his death drinking cold small beer. A good soldier ne'er forgot whether he died by musket or by pot. Ominous warning I failed to heed. 22 and a veteran of foreign wars, I went home at last. I fancied myself a leader, for had not the men of my battery given me a special token of appreciation. My talent for leadership, I imagined, would place me at the head of vast enterprises, which I would manage with the utmost assurance.
Yeah, so a lot of time has passed here. He's gone over to Europe. He's been part of the war. He is at Winchester Cathedral, and as he does go out to the cemetery that is so often a part of the churches of the time, and there is a grenadier, which is a special soldier, and this particular person drinking cold small beer. It was a low alcohol content beer of the time, is what this small beer refers to.
There's a picture of the doggerel.
Rob,
Yep.
Bill met Dr. Bob on May 12th, and it happened to be that this grenadier had passed away on May 12th as well in 1764. Obviously, way before Bill met Dr. Bob, but it does have
Yeah, a few years.
a few years before. And then the other thing I would note here is the special token of appreciation, they gave him a pocket watch. So made him feel really good about himself and what he had participated in with regard to the Army at the time.
It's Stepping Stones. I believe it's Stepping Stones. They have the ring that Bill was given. And I put a picture of it in the chat. And just for people to note, the doggerel is, a comic verse composed in a regular rhythm, etc. But what is in the book and what is actually on the tombstone is different. And I read that in Pass It On, the definite biography of AA co-founder Bill W. It is in the chat, but I'm going to read it because it is a little bit different. The famous epitaph actually reads, quote, "Here sleeps in peace a Hampshire grenadier, who caught his death by drinking cold small beer. Soldiers, be wise from his untimely fall, and when you're hot, drink strong or none at all. An honest soldier never is forgot, whether he die by musket or by pot." Now, as I say, that came from Pass It On, the book, and it's a little bit different. Now, I've also put a picture of the doggerel up in the screen in the chat for anybody to grab, and it's in Winchester Cathedral. Many people, especially from the UK, have gone there and had their picture taken. And Chuck, you've done that?
Yeah. This is the leaflet that you get in from the Winchester Cathedral, telling you all about it. It's AA related to the whole thing. Yeah,
Now,
so
Chuck,
brilliant.
from what I understand, is it not the original?
No, it's not the original. No,
in a frame hung up on a wall.
Yeah, it tells you about that in here. It says that the tombstone that Bill Wilson saw in 1918 was the copy of the 1764 original, which has unfortunately been destroyed. Erected in 1802, in 1966 it was taken to safekeeping in the Royal Hampshire Regiment Museum in Searle House, Southgate Street, where it can still be seen by visitors now. So, so that's I think it's the third edition, the one that's up there. And the other thing is that the reason he says that he saw it was the guy's name was Thomas Thatcher, which reminded him of Eddie Thatcher. Yeah. So that's me.
Perfect.
That's me over.
Thanks very much, Chuck. Appreciate it.
No problem.
We're on page 2 now, everybody. And as I say, there's some stuff in the chat about Thomas Thatcher, about small beer, etc. So by all means, grab these things if you can, and get a little bit of knowledge. I find the history fascinating. It's not going to keep you sober, but to me, it's given me a whole new enthusiasm for AA as a whole. So page 2, everybody. I took a night law course and obtained employment as investigator for a surety company. The drive for success was on. I'd proved to the world I was important. My work took me about Wall Street, and little by little I became interested in the market. Many people lost money, but some became very rich. Why not I? I studied economics and business as well as law. Potential alcoholic that I was, I nearly failed my law course. At one of the finals, I was too drunk to think or write. Though my drinking was not yet continuous, it disturbed my wife. We had long talks when I would still her forebodings by telling her that men of genius conceive their best projects when drunk, that the most majestic constructions of philosophic thought were so derived.
Yeah, so a couple of things here. I proved to the world that I was important. There was I've underlined that, and it sticks out to me because it shows that he's really driven here. He wants to succeed, and he is actually going to school and trying to better himself in regards to that. And through his work, he became interested in the market, and he went to the Brooklyn Law School, is where he was getting his law degree. And I also thought this was kind of a curious word that he uses, that is a potential alcoholic that I was. So something to note there. He nearly failed his law course. At one of the finals, obviously was too drunk to think or write. And so we're talking about somebody that's probably binge drinking from and having, you know, 1 to a few days of sobriety and then a lot of drinking was the cycle that he was going through. The other thing too is to note here is at the end of this paragraph, he's really rationalizing his drinking by telling her that men of genius conceive their best projects when drunk. It's what we call rationalizing the drinking, and I'm sure that all of us have been there before in regards to that. I know that I certainly have rationalized my drinking for various reasons, and all to be in the back of my mind, knowing that I was really wrong in my thought process, even though I believed it at the time. Rob?
You were wrong in your thought process
I
when you were
was.
drinking?
Yes.
I find that hard to believe. You know what? Here's a few things to let's put this all together. He was worked for a surety company, which was U.S. Fidelity and Guarantee, which is an insurance company that they were doing investments. Okay, Bill's got an ego. You know, Bill is going to make big money. He's going to be a man someday. He's going to be the man. Okay, so, but his wife is worried. Is starting to get worried about his drinking. She talks to him, frothy emotional appeal. Bill, don't you think you're drinking too much? Haven't we all heard that a couple of times in our life? You know, and it's like, no, everything is fine. I got this under control. You know, everything's going to be okay. But he comes to write his exams and he's too drunk. Who else has this problem? Dr. Bob. When he's going through to be a doctor. Now, I don't know about you, but when I think about doctors, I think of the pressure that they're under to succeed and the amount of knowledge that they have to keep up in their heads and to get out. Dr. Bob couldn't write either, you know, so, but Dr. Bob, as we will find out way down the road when we get into his story, okay, they took him back and he passed. Here he is, gone from, you know, medical school for a couple of months, and he still manages to pass his courses. That astounds me. The brilliance of this man must have had, you know, but I go on. It's amazing what we can do. We are on page 2. By the time I had completed the course, I knew the law was not for me. The inviting maelstrom of Wall Street had me in its grip. Business and financial leaders were my heroes. Out of this alloy of drink and speculation, I commenced to forge the weapon that one day would turn in its flight like a boomerang and all but cut me to ribbons. Living modestly, my wife and I saved $1,000. It went into certain securities, then cheap and rather unpopular. I rightly imagined that they would someday have a great rise. I failed to persuade my broker friends to send me out looking over factories and managements, but my wife and I decided to go anywhere. I had developed a theory that most people lost money in stocks through ignorance of markets. I discovered many more reasons later on.
Okay, so a couple of things here. You know, saving $1,000 is quite quite the thing. It's in today's dollars is roughly probably about $15,000 as far as that is concerned. This out of this alloy of drink and speculation, I commenced to forge the weapon that one day would turn in its flight like a boomerang and all but cut me to ribbons. And that is obviously a very eloquent way of saying that the alcohol is going to get the best of him and bring him basically to his knees. The other thing too is, and we'll talk a little bit more as we go along here, but he's really got a little bit of genius here in that he wants to go out. Obviously, we don't have the internet at the time, and we don't have this ability to just type the name of a company in and learn a bunch of stuff about them. But he decided that he was going to go out and actually study some of these companies, meet the people, look at what they're doing and how they're doing it, and make some investment decisions based on what he learned. And obviously, this does him well, as we'll see early on, but unfortunately, like we've said here, the drink is going to cut him to ribbons. So, Rob?
Yeah, and let's keep going. And I put a
Okay.
few things up in the chat, and one of the things that I put up in the chat is that Lois was a writer. She kept a diary, and one of the things that was released was Two Motorcycle Hobos, which was the trip that Bill and Lois go on to Goldfoot's farm, about them working, about Bill going to the factories to talk to the workers. And Bill was a smart man. No ifs, ands, or buts. You know, he knew that getting information about what new products were coming out or what they were working on, what new things were coming out, would be coming out in the future, the stock would rise like crazy. So Bill thought, well, the only way to really find out this information is to go and talk to the people that are working in the factory. So Bill went out and did this. Now, why did Lois go with him? Well, she wasn't too happy with Bill's drinking. So she figured, if I get him out of the city and we're out there, he's not going to be able to drink as much, and we'll have to spend some time, and Lois can get him away. So, as I say, I put into the chat. All you have to do is double click on the link, and it'll take you to. You can download the diary if you are interested in reading it. It's got some really interesting points, though, I must admit that. We gave up our position and off we roared on a motorcycle. The sidecar stuffed with tent, blankets, a change of clothes, and 3 huge volumes of a financial reference service. Our friends thought a lunacy commission should be appointed. Perhaps they were right. I had had some success at speculation, so we had a little money. Well, we once worked on a farm for a month to avoid drawing on our small capital. That was the last honest manual labor on my part for many a day. We covered the whole eastern United States in a year. At the end of it, my reports to Wall Street procured me a position there and the use of a large expense account. The exercise of an option brought in more money, leaving us with a profit of several $1,000s for that year.
Really, it turned out the trip actually was very beneficial to Bill and Lois, and probably several other people that invested alongside him. What they did go out on was an Army surplus Harley Davidson motorcycle. I think Rob had put a picture of it in the chat, and it just amazes me that they could go out and for an entire year travel on a motorcycle and go to these different towns and with these different companies and everything. They did, in fact, work at the Ella Goldfoot farm in New York for a month. And there was a couple of things that happened there. I think that, if I'm not mistaken, but Bill didn't drink very much at that point, if at all, during that month that he was working at the farm, if I remember right. The trip turned out to be quite profitable, several $1,000s. Again, if we're looking at $1,000 and the equivalent of about $15,000 today, that would have been quite a bit of money that Bill and Lois would have made over that period of time because of the investments they made in the companies that they had been studying. Rob?
Yeah, so let's keep going.
All right.
Page 3. For the next few years, fortune threw money and applause my way. I had arrived. My judgment and ideas were followed by many to the tune of paper millions. The great boon of the late 20s was seething and swelling. Drinking was taking an important and exhilarating part of my life. There was loud talk in the jazz places uptown. Everyone spent in thousands and chattered in millions. Scoffers could scoff and be damned. I made a host of fair weather friends.
Yeah, so he had arrived. So he finally gets to the point where he's making a lot of money. We're talking probably on paper. He was close, if not basically a millionaire. That obviously is going to change in the future here, but he also was developing his drink routine, and that is you know, every day going to the bars and spending time with the fair weather friends. So, you know, it's interesting that he brings that up. You know, we always know if fair weather friends are the ones that are around when things are going good, when your money is on the table and you're probably buying all the drinks and that type of thing. But we'll soon find out that when the money dries up, the drink doesn't, and you find yourself alone and on your own without these so-called friends, because obviously the money's no longer there, and you've gotten to the point that your drinking has alienated you amongst a group of people. Rob?
Yeah, just think of Bill's ego right now. You know, whenever Bill talked, people listened. E.F. Hutton was Bill at this moment. You know, what did Bill say? What does Bill know about this company? You know, does he have friends there? You know, what's going on? They were listening to him. Okay, he was a big shot at this moment. My drinking assumed more serious proportions, continuing all day and almost every night. The remonstrations of my friends terminated in a row, and I became a lone wolf. There were many unhappy scenes in our sumptuous apartment. There had been no real infidelity, for loyalty to my wife, helped at times by extreme drunkenness, kept me out of those scrapes.
Yeah, a couple of things here too is that the remonstrances is another thing for disapproval. So the disapproval of my friends terminated in a row, and I became a lone wolf. Another phrase or term that used, he was now drinking alone most of the time. There were many, it was causing problems between he and Lois. And they're talking about their apartment. This apartment was on 38th and Livingston in New York. I think here too is that there'd been no real infidelity, for loyalty to my wife helped at times by extreme drunkenness. Obviously, that kept him from straying, if you will, from his wife Lois. But that's again, it's just a curious thing to bring up and make note of. But obviously, we all know that extreme drunkenness pretty much sets you up for failure on anything that you're trying to achieve. Rob?
Yeah, the sumptuous apartment. What happened is that the Bill wanted a bigger apartment, so what he did is he took the wall down in between the apartment next door. So, and he had a deal with the landlord that if he was to move or times change, that Bill would have to pay for it to be repaired and the wall being put back up. Well, guess what? Bill never did pay for that wall to be put back up because he couldn't afford it. But you know, the whole idea is, think about it. You know, things are going so well that you're taking over the apartment next door. You know, he bought a grand piano for his wife. You know, things are going great for Bill. Okay, he's drinking. Yeah, he's drinking more. He's becoming a lone wolf. Now, something you have to remember, and I don't know when this started for Bill, but the further we get into a story, you'll find you notice these things. He's getting into fights with people, becoming a mean drunk. So keep that in mind. In 1929, I contracted Gulf fever. We went at once to the country, my wife to applaud, while I started out to overtake Walter Hagen. Liquor caught up with me much faster than I came up behind Walter. I began to be jittery in the morning. Golf permitted drinking every day and every night. It was fun to caroom around the exclusive course which had inspired such awe in me as a lad. I acquired the impeccable coat of tan one sees upon the well-to-do. The local banker watched me whirl fat checks in and out of his till with amused skepticism.
Yeah, so he's now decided to take up golf once more to the country with his wife to applaud, and started out doing pretty well. His goal was to overtake Walter Hagen, which at the time was, I think, noted as the number 3 rated golfer in the world. Liquor caught up to him much faster than he came up behind Walter, so the drink actually got the best of him. He began to be jittery in the morning, so he's now showing the signs of withdrawal in the morning, which is that first that we're noting that his drinking is now causing some physical effects that he would then use alcohol to eliminate. We're talking about the country club we're talking about is the Equinox Country Club. One of the noted members was Lincoln's son, Abraham Lincoln's son, or Robert Tom Lincoln, and it was a fairly exclusive course. So very much high society. Then the local banker watched me whirl fat checks in and out of his till with amused skepticism. So he's really burning through his money at this point and spending a lot of it on alcohol. And now he's found another group that is away from Wall Street at the time to drink with, and that too is going to come to an end. Rob?
And also, who was a member of that course was Ebby Thatcher's brother. So, this was an exclusive country club. As you say, Bill's burning through money, but you know what? More is going to be coming. It's just, in the late 20s, money was coming out of the stock market like crazy. Everybody was making money. Who could lose? More, you know what? Hey, I spend this so much today, but you know what? I'll be getting more tomorrow, so don't worry about it. Life is good. He's living the high life. But comes all of this. Abruptly in October 1929, hell broke loose on the New York Stock Exchange. After one of those days of inferno, I wobbled from a hotel bar to a brokerage office. It was 8 o'clock. 5 hours after the markets closed, the ticker still clattered. I was staring at an inch of the tape which bore the inscription XY, Canadian Z, American Z, -32. It had been 52 that morning. I was finished, and so were many friends. The papers reported men jumping to death from the towers of high finance. That disgusted me. I would not jump. I went back to the bar. My friends had dropped several million since 10 o'clock. So what? Tomorrow was another day. As I drank, the old fierce determination to win came back.
Yeah, so a couple of things here. Obviously, this is the stock market crash of the late 1920s, early 1930s, and which would bring on the Great Depression. He was worth a lot of money in the morning, and then by the afternoon or evening, he was worth basically nothing. And there were a lot of people that had decided that the only way out of this was to commit suicide. And it certainly had happened from several reports, not just from here. The interesting thing is that at this point in time, Bill is disgusted by this option of committing suicide, but that will change in the future here as we kind of see as his drinking gets worse and worse. The other thing I'd note here is that Bill's higher power at this point in time is money. So he's definitely worshiping the money over anything else and drink. But obviously, he's decided that he's going to try again and come back with a vengeance. Rob?
And what was Bill's solution when everything's falling apart around you? Back to the bar.
To the bar.
Nothing bad ever happens in the bar. The next morning, I telephoned a friend in Montreal. He had plenty of money left and thought I'd better go to Canada. By the following spring, we were living in our accustomed style. I felt like Napoleon returning from Elba. No St. Helena for me. But drinking caught up with me again, and my generous friend had to let me go. This time we stayed broke.
Yeah, this is Dick Johnson was his friend up at Green Shield and Company was the name of the company up in Canada. And this is following the spring of 1929. I'm sorry, the Christmas of 1929, followed by the spring of 1930. And he was basically back on top. But again, he probably at the time was able to white knuckle the drinking for a period of time, but unfortunately it caught back up to him, and he was essentially let go from his company. And at that point, they actually never really recover from it again with much money at all. Rob?
Yeah, as the story goes, that in Montreal, that what happened is that he was hanging around the country club and getting in fights. And so Dick Johnson, had to basically let him go. But don't forget that Canada wasn't hit as hard with the collapse of the stock market as the US was. And that's why Canada was still going relatively strong compared to the US. We went to live with my wife's parents. I found a job, then lost it as a result of a brawl with a taxi driver. Mercifully, no one could guess that I was to have no real employment for 5 years, or hardly draw a sober breath. My wife began to work in a department store, coming home exhausted to find me drunk. I became an unwelcome hanger-oner at brokerage places.
Yeah, so just a couple of little things here. He was employed, and I think it was the day is his first day of work. He was on his way to work, or within the first day of his work, he was on his way. Got involved in a fight with a taxi driver, and that unfortunately resulted in him losing his job. The department store that Lois started working at was Macy's, and he became an unwelcome hanger-on at brokerage places. So there was his lack of ability to do anything right and well was apparent, and there were people that were finally tired of him being drunk all the time and didn't want him around. So he didn't have much of a future here. Rob?
Yeah, we're still looking for the name of that taxi driver, to be honest with you, but nobody's been able to come up with that one yet. But us history nerds we're just chomping at the bit trying to figure that one out. But here he is again, getting into a fight with a taxi driver. It's just going to show that, Bill's temper and short fuse is getting the best of him, and everywhere right now, for a guy that was making money hand over fist, everything was going his way. Now everything is not going his way. Everything is going the opposite. Everything he touches seems to turn to crap. Liquor ceased to be a luxury. Top of page 5. It became a necessity. Bathtub gin, 2 bottles a day, and often 3, got to be the routine. Sometimes a small deal would net me a few $100s, and I would pay my bills at the bars and delicatessens. This went on endlessly, and I began to awaken very early in the morning, shaking violently. A tumbler full of gin, followed by half a dozen bottles of beer, would be required if I were to eat any breakfast. Nevertheless, I still thought I could control the situation, and there were periods of sobriety which renewed my wife's hopes.
Yeah, so a couple of things. That's one of the things is liquor ceased to be a luxury. It became a necessity. This is a pure sign of the progression of alcoholism, and we've all been there where it actually stopped being a luxury, and it then at that point became necessary in order to just function. Um, he has no choice anymore at this point in his life. And the other noted thing is that he paid the bars and delicatessens, essentially paid them first. This kept his habit going, and it was a welcome thing for him to pay that first and then leave the other things behind. But that way he was able to continue his drinking endlessly. He also wakes up in the morning shaking violently. We've now gone beyond just the jitters, and he essentially has to drink in order to come back up to any form of normalcy and calmness, and get to a point where he could actually eat anything at this point. So you can only imagine just how far gone and how bad he was at this point. It does say that he still thought he could control the situation, and there were periods of sobriety which renewed his wife's hope, and that's obviously we know is white knuckling it, and he's obviously thinking that his self will fix self with self, and it doesn't work. We've all been there because of that. Rob?
We have been, and that's the sad part. As I say, everything that Bill touches right now seems to be turning to hell in a handbag, and nothing's going right. But Bill still thought he could control it. And how often have we said, you know what, things aren't going right now, but you know what, it's okay, I got it. Don't worry about it. It'll all work out. All work out. Gradually, things got worse. The house was taken over by the mortgage holder. My mother-in-law died. My wife and father-in-law became ill. Then I got a promising business opportunity. Stocks were at the low point in 1932, and I had somehow formed a group to buy. I would share generously in the profits. Then I went on a prodigious bender, and that chance vanished.
Yeah, so a lot of things here. Gradually, things got worse. I can't imagine just how bad things are at this point. We're talking about some really low lows. The house was taken over by the mortgage holder. Mother-in-law died. The wife and father-in-law became ill. This was on top of Bill's drinking. I can only imagine just the despair and the darkness that was befell of the house and where they were. Again, he gets a promising business opportunity. Back to Rob's point on how smart and driven Bill was. He was basically buying low and hopefully going to make a profit here by selling high, as they say. He went on a prodigious bender, and what I understand is that this was drinking Applejack, a New Jersey moonshine, and he went on for 3 full days of drinking, and obviously at that point his opportunity vanished, and it went away. Again, I'm sure all of us have been to a point where we got something good going on, we end up drinking way too much, and what good was going on disappears, and there we are sitting there with nothing left just nothing left. Rob?
Yeah, this business deal that he had, these people knew about Bill's drinking. And they said, Bill, if you take as much as one drink, you're out. And now Bill put money into this venture too. So he had a financial stake in it. But the whole idea was that, Bill, you take one drink, you're out. Because they knew what Bill, they had heard rumors and had heard about Bill's drinking. And Bill, for quite a while, white knuckled it until, they were in a hotel room with a whole bunch of people that were checking out this company, Pennick and Ford, and, passing around this Applejack. And the first time that they sent it around, Bill said, no, it's okay, thank you. Then, he thought to him, the old insidious insanity that rolls around in our head. Oh, you know what? I've never tried that before. Boy, this is my only time maybe to try this. So he tries it and goes on a prodigious bender. There goes his business deal. There goes the money that he had invested. Everything he had. Don't forget, when the stock market crashed, Bill was in about $60,000 worth of debt.
Wow.
A lot of money in those days. It's a lot of money today, so his chance of, reclaiming the glory and everything like that just couldn't keep him sober. I woke up. This had to be stopped. I saw I could not take so much as one drink. I was through forever. Before then, I had written lots of sweet promises, but my wife happily observed that this time I meant business, and so I did. Shortly after,
No,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Okay. Shortly afterward, I came home drunk. There had been no fight. Where'd be my high resolve? I simply didn't know. It hadn't even come to mind. Someone had pushed a drink my way, and I had taken it. Was I crazy? I began to wonder, for such an appalling lack of perspective seemed near being just that.
Yeah. So really a lot of things here. This is Bill admitting at this point that he has a problem and he's powerless over alcohol. He recognizes that he needs to stop, and he makes these promises by writing these promises in the family Bible. And there's records of that, of him doing this on behalf of Lois. And we just know that he just doesn't have any more willpower and ability to actually stop. And it goes on to basically shortly afterward, I came home drunk. There had been no fight, or had been my high resolve. He actually doesn't want to drink anymore at this point. He's baffled as to why this is going on, and he's powerless over alcohol. It hadn't even come to mind. This instantly, he takes a drink, and again, being baffled by this, the insanity has certainly set in, and the allergy is got a grip on him, and he is down for the count. Rob?
Down for the count again. I tried to emphasize He thought he could keep himself sober. I can do this. I can do that. And that's why I tried to emphasize all the I's that he's using. He wrote in the family Bible, that he was going to quit drinking for good. Just to go back on the contract that Bill signed, I put something in the chat, and I'm just going to read it. Bill signs a contract to form a stock buying syndicate through Bill's brother-in-law, Gardner Swensel, husband of Lois's sister, Kitty. He had met Arthur Wheeler and Frank Winans. All three had similar ideas about the stock market and thought it was a good time to buy. They decided to form a stock buying syndicate with Bill to be the manager. Bill had just gotten fired from a salary job at Stanley Statistics over a drunken brawl with a taxi driver, and consequently had a check for $2,000, which is about $44,000 in 2023 money, from a business deal with Joe Hirschhorn that he had given to Lois, but took back to invest in the syndicate. Bill happily signed a contract which gave him a generous interest in the enterprise, despite Winans insisting on a stipulation that if Bill had so much as one drink of alcohol, the contract would be void and Bill would forfeit his entire interest in the venture, including his $2,000. He managed to stay sober 5 weeks. And where I got that information was Pass It On, pages 90 to 92, and Thompson's biography on Bill W., pages 180 to 183, and Hartigan's Bill W. biography, page 47. You know, so 5 weeks you stay sober, you know, which is, let's be honest, that's a long time. You know, you figure you got a lick by that time. Oh, poor Bill. Oh, well. So where am I right now?
You're at the very, very bottom of page 5, renewing my
Bottom
resolve.
of page 5. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Renewing my resolve, I tried again. Some time passed, and confidence began to replaced by cocksureness. I could laugh at the gin mills. Now I had what it takes. One day I walked into a cafe to telephone. In no time, I was beating on the bar, asking myself how it happened. As the whiskey rose to my head, I told myself I would manage better next time, but I might as well get good and drunk then. And I did.
And there we are. This is in part the period of time that Rob is talking about, that Bill is able to stay sober. Obviously, he is getting overconfident. Certainly, I know after I was sober for 2 weeks, I thought I had everything licked. I thought everybody should forgive me, everything, bygones be bygones, and we should move on. I can remember the frustration I felt when people were still skeptical of me, and I couldn't understand why, if I had already had 2 weeks of sobriety, and obviously I had beaten it, and what was I wrong? And I had a lot of work ahead of me, and still to this day I continue to work on it. But he gets to a point, and then obviously, without any thought whatsoever, next thing you know, he's drinking, and he's beating the bar, asking himself how it happened. With this, like I said, the malady kicked in. He was unable to tap in. He hadn't tapped into this higher power by any stretch of the imagination. Then his willpower was not good enough to keep him from taking that first drink. And then boom, the allergy kicks in, and he gets drunk. There's a thing here that I always think is interesting. There's two types of you're two different people. There's a person that is sober and says, I'm going to drink, and I'm only going to take 3 drinks, for example. So somehow I'm going to, quote, control my drinking. But what changes is that as soon as you take that first drink, that alcohol goes to your head, and it changes who you are and what you are, and then at that point you're powerless, and the allergy takes over, and you're off to the races, and so you're not the same person that you were when you were sober. So it was one of the things that I had to come to terms with, in that I was fooling myself by being sober and saying I'm going to be able to control my drinking, and taking that first drink or 2, because obviously I couldn't, and I wouldn't. But I imagine in Bill's case, there is this, taking that first drink, and then as the alcohol takes over, there's nothing that you can do to stop it, and you're fooling yourself in the process. Rob?
Yeah, it's sort of depressing, isn't it, when you think about it?
Yes.
And then you feel bad, and you disappointed people. You thought you had this, you know. We're controlling and enjoying our drinking. When I'm trying to control it, I'm not enjoying it. When I'm enjoying it, I'm not controlling it, is the old adage that I've heard. The remorse, horror, and hopelessness of the next morning are unforgettable. The courage to do battle was not there. My brain raced uncontrollably, and there was a terrible sense of impending calamity. I hardly dared cross the street, lest I collapse and be run down by an early morning truck, for it was scarcely daylight. An all-night place supplied me with a dozen glasses of ale. My writhing nerves were stilled at last. A morning paper told me the market had gone to hell again. Well, so had I. The market would recover, but I wouldn't. There was a hard thought. That was a hard thought. Should I kill myself? No, not now. Then a mental fog settled down. Gin would fix that. So 2 bottles and oblivion.
Yeah, you know, in a really bad, dark place. He can't stand himself. The remorse and horror and hopelessness of the next morning are unforgettable. I know that I can relate to that too. I when I took the first drink, even when I was trying to stop, and knowing that I had a problem, knowing that it was causing consequences and everything, that guilt and remorse that I felt as soon as I started drinking was huge. And no longer was it any fun whatsoever to drink. And obviously, I was drinking what I would say out of necessity. And I was doing it over and over again. And obviously, taking a drink, I can remember going to lunch at times with my wife and being shaky and can't wait to get that first glass of wine in me to calm me down so that I could actually function and think straight. It was a bad time for me as well. Rob, guess we can.
Yeah, well, it is 12:53. Let's bring in Mr. Bill.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Bill S. from New Jersey. Thanks a lot, guys. Good job today. This is a really, really good story. Bill's story. I think this is one of the best stories that's in this book. Bill's story has everything in it. It's got the drunk-a-log in it. It's got the classic 12-step call. It's got all 12 steps mentioned in it. It's got the spiritual experience, and it's got instructions on what to do on how to stay sober after you've had your spiritual experience. So there's so much information in here. It would literally take me at least an hour to go over everything that we talked about here. So pretty basically, when Bill went over to England and he was at that Winchester Cathedral, that was in August of 1918. So he had already gotten married by this point. He had already started drinking by this point. So these are things that are going on in Bill's life here. And then he talks about on page 2, he talks about he developed a theory that most people lost money in stock due to ignorance of markets. Bill was probably one of the first stock speculators. He came up with a lot of different ideas on what companies were going to be worth money. And then it says, I discovered many more reasons later on. He doesn't really tell you what those more reasons were, but most likely he figured out how to do insider trading and how to do what we call pump and dump. And, those kind of things, if we did that kind of stuff, we'd be in prison. Today the politicians are allowed to pull that stuff, but if we did that, we'd go to prison. So most likely he was pulling some unscrupulous stuff. That's why he was making so much money that he was making. And he talks about on page 3, he was in these jazz places uptown. Uptown refers to the northern part of Manhattan. They have uptown, midtown, and downtown. And that's part of Manhattan. That's where the jazz places were. And these jazz places, the well-to-do people used to hang out in them. So a lot of their stock deals or sales or whatever, they were conducting these things in these jazz places, not just in the offices where they worked. So they were meeting clients there or meeting new people there that had money, and then they were trying to sell them stuff. And his friends were telling him, hey, Bill, you're drinking a little bit too much. You're not going to be able to deal with these clients right. And Bill got in a little bit of an argument with them. And basically, you know what it's like when somebody tells an alcoholic to lighten up and not drink so much. He told his friends to, take a powder, get the hell out of here. I don't need you people. I can do all of this all by myself. And that's pretty much what happened here. And then on the top of page 4, it talks about him caromming around an exclusive course. When he got into playing golf, the exclusive course was the Aquanic Country Club, and that was in Vermont. And it was so exclusive, Robert Todd Lincoln was the president of that country club from 1904 to 1926. And Robert Todd Lincoln was the son of President Lincoln. So there was people there that were very, very rich and had a lot of money. And you can see Bill's ego. He went for the top country club that he could find. He was caromming around this exclusive course. Bill wasn't caromming around the bowling alley. he was hanging out where the money was, and that's exactly what he was doing because Bill was literally an egomaniac. And on page the next paragraph, he's got high finance in capital letters. That was Bill's higher power at the time, high finance. And like was already mentioned, these people were committing suicide, jumping from those towers of high finance, and that disgusted Bill. He thought that somebody committing suicide was completely disgusting and a horrible thing to do. And we'll see in a couple of pages that his attitude on that changes a little bit. And then he talks about, when everything fell apart, XYZ went to 32, and it was 52 that morning. You know, a 20 degree losing 20 points in the stock market, depending upon how much money that's invested and how many stocks they have. That could be hundreds of millions of dollars in the valuation of a company. I mean, we don't realize how much money that is. And then he wound up going to Montreal, and I'm not making this up. The guy's name in Montreal was Dick Johnson. That was really his name. And after Bill was there in the spring of 1930, that stock, that's XYZ, it went back up to 55. So Bill was back in the money again because Bill had most of his money invested in that XYZ. And the XYZ, the real name of that was Pennick and Ford. And they were involved in different kinds of corn products and syrup products and making corn syrup and that kind of stuff. So, and Bill that was one of the companies he checked out when he was on that trip with Lois when they went up and down the East Coast. And he figured out this company was going to make a lot of money. So he invested a lot of his money in there. And when it went down, he lost a lot. And then when it went back up, back in the next year in 1930, he was back in the money again. But he started drinking again, and his friend had to let him go. That means he got fired. Getting let go, that's a nice way. That's a euphemism for you got the boot. You know, you got fired. Get out of here. So that's pretty much what happened to him. And and then he talks about he had this fight with a taxi driver. And like Rob read some of the stuff on that, he got in a barroom brawl. And some of the thugs that were in the barroom got a hold of his briefcase, and they got his papers out of it, and they found out who he was and where he worked, and they started calling him up at work, threatening him at work. And at this time, he was working for Stanley Statistics, and he was working for them for approximately 1 year when all of this stuff started happening. And they were calling him up at work, and they were threatening him over the phone, and somehow the place he worked for got wind of that, and they didn't want anything to do with that, so they had to fire him. So he lost his job because of you can see the progression of everything that's going on in Bill's life here. You know, he started off just drinking a little bit. When he first went into the service, he started off drinking. He had that Bronx cocktail, and everything worked out really good with that. You know, it broke the ice. It like bridges a social gap and that kind of thing. And then, as you can see through here, as Bill's drinking more and more and more, it's starting to destroy his life. The alcohol is getting to the point where he can't stop. Even when he was in law school, when he went for his final exams, he was too drunk to think or write. You know, when you go to law school, that's a very, very important day in your life when you have to take your final exams. Most people are up all night cramming for the exam, and Bill was getting drunk, and he wound up drunk the next day, and he couldn't stay sober when he got this really, really important day in his life. So you can see how the alcoholism is taking over his life, and it's destroying everything that he had, everything that he was trying to do. And then on page 5, on the top of it, it says, liquor ceased to be a luxury, it became a necessity. Most people believe that's where Bill is crossing the line. He's going from a hard drinker to an alcoholic. When something is a luxury, that means it's something you want to have, but it's not really necessary. You don't have to have it. And when something becomes a necessity, that means you have to have it. You can't do without it. Food and water are necessities. Air is a necessity. You have to have that. So when liquor became a necessity, he was at the point now in his drinking where he has to have it. He's not going to be able to white knuckle it anymore. He's not going to be able to maybe not drink for a short period of time. It's a necessity. And you notice it says he paid his bills at the bars and the delicatessens. When Bill made these small deals and he got money, he didn't pay the electric bill. He didn't pay the mortgage. He went and he paid the bars and the delicatessens because that's where he was getting his alcohol from. And that's really all he cared about at that point, at this point in his life. He just wanted to do whatever he could so that he would be able to keep getting his alcohol. And then it talks about this business deal that they came up with. And that was in 1932 when he made this. This was still during Prohibition. This Prohibition went to 1933. And this was in Bound Brook, New Jersey, and the name of the place was Pathé Labs. They had a new photographic process, and photography back at that time was a really, really, really big, important thing. You know, that was like iPhones today, photography back in the 1930s. So what happened was they were playing cards the night before, and Bill didn't play cards, but he was sitting there watching them, and they were passing around this jug of Applejack. And somebody said, you know, Bill, you never tasted any of this. They call this Jersey Lightning. These boys over here in Jersey make this stuff. And Bill said, oh, no, I'm not drinking. I don't want any of that. And then his obsession kicked in. Started thinking, well, you know, I never tasted this stuff. What is one little tiny taste going to do? And finally, as the jug kept coming around, Bill took one taste of it. And we all know what happens to an alcoholic when we take one drink. We activate the allergy, the phenomenon of cravings kicks in, and Bill got drunk. And the story is he stayed drunk for 3 days. He went back to his hotel room, and he laid on the bed for 3 days, calling the bellboy in every day and giving him money and sending him out to get him another bottle of Applejack. So for 3 days, he stayed drunk, and everything got destroyed. That whole deal that he was going to be in, he got kicked out of it because he signed a contract that if he drank, he wouldn't be in it anymore. So you can see the progression here of how alcohol destroyed Bill's life, everything that he went through. And if you follow along with everything that's going on here, Bill's drinking more and more and more, and the consequences are getting worse and worse and worse and worse. You know, this is not a social drinker. This is not a normal drinking. Bill's life is literally going down the tubes. He's going to hell in a handbasket, and he still thinks that he can control the situation. And where we got up to on page 6 is it says, should I kill myself? Now he's thinking about killing himself. Remember back on page 4, he said it disgusted him that people were jumping from the towers of high finance. He thought suicide was disgusting. Now he's contemplating killing himself. You can see the progression. It's not just the progression with the alcohol. His mindset is changing. He's getting to the point where he doesn't care anymore. I don't care if I live or die. I'm fed up with all of this. I don't want to live like this anymore. So pretty much that's what we went through, and that's pretty much all I got on this. Thanks a lot for letting me share.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, let's do the serenity prayer, Rob.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.
Excellent.